Fried chicken is one of those dishes that is impossible to place. Every country in the world has their own version of it. Today I'm going to show you how to make my version of a Filipino style fried chicken, which is very different but very tasty. And I'm going to be talking to Marion Grasby, one of my favorite food content creators. She's usually in between Thailand and Australia, and she's going to show us how to make her Thai fried chicken.
So my mum is from Thailand, my dad is from Australia, and was based in Bangkok for 10 years before COVID. Bangkok to me is like a dream city for food. With a street stall typically, it specialises in one thing. So you might have a family or a stall holder or generations of that stall holder's family that have just been making that one particular noodle soup. It's been passed down, handed down, possibly improved, but it's kind of like that specialty thing.
So we're talking about fried chicken today, and I thought it was a really cool theme to kind of go over, because I'd always had, especially in the Philippines, our fried chicken's more on the breaded American style that's popularized in like Jollibee, our fast food chain. But then when you do go around the Philippines, you do get a lot of street fried chicken, which is usually just very basic, and most of the flavor actually comes from the marinade.
I feel like the fried chicken of Bangkok, at least, is, as you said, very much based on the marinade, giving you just a really thin film of that crispiness. It's not like a KFC situation where you have that kind of where the crust is kind of separate almost. Particularly what I eat on the streets is a little thinner, not as sort of big and fat and fatty and soft, I guess, as maybe the chicken that I would eat here in Australia that would typically get sold. So yeah, I think there is probably a little bit of a difference there. Maybe, a lot of the street stalls would probably get their chicken from the market or from wet markets. So I think that's where you get that difference in the texture and the flavor.
And I think that plays a huge part in kind of like Asian fried chicken in general. It's that smaller, the thinner meat probably lends to faster cooking times and easier to crisp up, I guess.
I really think the crispiness is something that comes out there, because I feel like when I fry chicken in Australia, it doesn't get as crisp. And possibly that's also related to like how the chickens are packed. Like if you're buying from the wet market, they're typically out in the open and in the air, and I guess the skin is drying out. Whereas in a supermarket in a lot of Western countries, your chicken is packed under plastic in the supermarket and is a lot wetter. So I feel like that definitely is, a key factor that makes it different. This was inspired by a street cart lady that operated just near my condo in Bangkok. It's very fragrant and herbaceous, so she used the lemongrass and the kaffir lime leaves as well with her fried chicken wings. I don't know if you would say that it's like sort of widespread, typically authentic. There is a dish that's like a fried lemongrass chicken. So this lemongrass part, I think, is a very traditional way to prepare the lemongrass for deep frying, because I have seen this in other very authentic kind of Thai lemongrass chicken dishes. So the idea here is that you pound the lemongrass so fine that it becomes almost like a floss. And the texture of that and the fragrance that you get when that hits the hot oil and then becomes really crispy is something really special. So definitely that aspect of it is quite traditional and also gives you all of the fragrance. This is what we call in Thailand samgler, which means 3 flavors, and it's garlic, coriander root, and also peppercorns. Historically, Thai cuisine, I guess, originally was very much about peppercorns, because as you might know, chilies and peppers, they came from South America, sort of like in the 15th, 14th century, around about with the traders. So before that, the spice actually came a lot from peppercorns. So it's that peppercorn, coriander root, and garlic paste, samgler, and that forms like the basis of a lot of Thai marinades, a lot of Thai curry pastes. Now you've got the garlic and the pepper and the coriander. You've also got the lemongrass, oyster sauce, fish sauce, sugar. This is definitely not traditional. My mum scolds me every time I do this, but corn flour, I think, gives you a better crispiness and also gives you just a really lovely, fine, crisp coating without it being that really heavy, breading coating.
So how long will this marinate for?
Oh, you can just marinate and just throw it straight in. I think it's a very punchy, very flavorful marinade. And then this is the additional freshness, which is the kaffir lime leaves, which I don't see a lot of fried chicken stalls in Bangkok doing, but my lovely lady near my house always did it. So that's where the inspiration came from. I don't tend to test my oil using a thermometer. I stick the chopstick in like old school mama way, and I judge by the amount of bubble around the chopstick how hot it is. I would say it'd be around about, if I had to guess, like a 165, 170 kind of fry oil temperature, because if it's too hot, the lemongrass will burn straight away.
These are not bone-in, right? These are chicken thighs, I'm guessing?
Chicken thighs, boneless, and just cut into little bite-sized pieces. And it's quite important because the lemongrass sort of can clump up in the oil to kind of break it apart a little bit. And then you have the kaffir lime leaves going into that bowl where everything's still warm, so that now you're tossing it through, and the heat, residual heat, is like releasing all the aromas from that kaffir lime as well. So you get that really fresh hit at the end, as well as like the crispy lemongrass.
I'm seriously gonna make this tonight.
I think you like it.
Why am I not making this? It looks so good.
So there you go. Kind of like, I guess it's kind of like Thai chicken nugget.
Oh yeah, so it'd really just be kind of like whatever skin there is on the chicken, that's the one that's in contact with the oil. So you don't get any kind of, the only crispiness you get is the meat that's rendering.
Yeah, that's right. Which is why she prefers the texture to be, maybe that's more authentic for her, not authentic, but maybe that's her experience of, fried chicken more than mine. Whereas obviously I'm a little bit more Western, so I do love a breaded chicken, and I like having just that little bit of like kind of crispiness coating, I guess. So yeah.
There's really no such thing as a typical Filipino fried chicken. So what I wanted to do was to play around with the various inspirations of Filipino fried chicken. So like I mentioned, Jollibee is a standard for us. There's this dish called Chicken Joy, which is the best.
Joy, what a cool name.
So I thought, okay, I'd make something not similar to that, but kind of still with that style in mind. And I'm going to show you that process of breading later. We love marinating in the Philippines, so I wanted to make sure that we did that for this dish. So I've got some chicken thighs and some chicken legs, bone in. I made some slits so that it cooks out a little faster. I added some onion powder, and now I'm going to add just some crushed garlic. Making marinades, I'm a huge fan of using garlic skins. I feel like they're so underrated, but they carry so much of that garlic flavor. I mean, they're annoying to pick around, but I think for me it's really important. And then I'm adding some fish sauce just to marinate it. Some peppercorns as well. These are usually whole. Calamansis, I don't know if you have this variety in Thailand, but they're tiny little yellow, green limes.
They're not very common in Thailand. I feel like I have seen them, but they're not very common.
So we use a lot of calamansis. So that gets mashed together. This is my little, just a tip of my hat to you. In the Philippines, we use a lot of soda to marinate. It helps break down the protein. It brings a lot of flavor right away. It actually brings a lot of sweetness to the dish too. Particularly in the Philippines, we'll use Sprite or 7-Up, Coke when it's a soy-based dish. We'll use Royal, which is kind of like an orange soda. But because I'm talking to you, I'm using Bundaberg.
That's so cool. I love that. And I'm even in Queensland, like exactly. Where Bundaberg ginger beer comes from. Oh, that's so lovely.
So it helps really soften out the meat, but it also brings a lot of flavor to the dish. I wouldn't marinate this in a little bit of soy sauce. I wouldn't marinate this over 4 hours because it does have a little acidity, and I don't want the chicken to kind of get chalky or too dry as we fry it. So 4 hours later, I'll just make a very simple batter. Some people like to use 1:3 cornstarch flour. I'm using 1:1 cornstarch to flour ratio. So I still keep that crispiness, but I don't get an excess of breadiness to the chicken. So this is 4 hours later. So this is a trick that they do in Jollibee. So right before cooking it, they actually they dip it into some really, really cold water. So I think it helps firm up the meat, and it also helps coat it with flour without having to add like a batter or an egg or anything. And it helps remove those garlic skins, those peppers, anything that was clinging onto the chicken. So
That's such
cold
a
shock
cool
and some water.
tip. Wow.
So that goes into some hot oil. I'm not doing a full submerge here. I think my wok is about 3/4 of the chicken, and I'll just keep moving it around to make sure it doesn't burn at the bottom. But I do want, like, I'm not looking for that perfectly beige chicken. Like, and when you look at Thai fried chicken, also you got kind of like browner, darker spots here and there. And I feel like street fried chicken in the Philippines is very similar.
Yeah.
Because they do it in big batches, and then it just kind of sits there all day, and it's still delicious.
Yeah.
So cooking all those down until they're cooked. And then I thought, okay, let's play around more with.
Did you scoop up some of that fried that garlic as well in there?
When I was done with the chicken, I crushed extra garlic,
Aha.
and then I added skin and the garlic cloves in there. Again, I do this with the garlic because when you smell it, it just is so much more intense. And so I wanted to do like a quick little glaze with some fish sauce, some brown sugar, and some water, and just cooked it down until it got really kind of sticky. I didn't want this to be like a Korean gochujang glaze where it covers the whole chicken. I just wanted to use it as a seasoning because it is very intense and very salty, obviously.
Look
so I
at
just
that
added a little bit.
chicken. Wow, that is a good looking piece of chicken right there.
So I added a little bit, just like you would, like in the U.S. Sometimes they add honey or maple syrup to their chickens, and that's kind of how I wanted to use this, kind of like a fish sauce syrup almost.
That looks amazing. I reckon that cold like soak is really key.
It's key, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've done it with and without it, and I do feel like you get a nice thin layer versus like kind of clumpy flour layers. So you still have kind of those ridges, which I think are really key.
Yeah.
That stick out a little bit.
Oh wow, I can't. I really need to go and cook your chicken. Erwan, it looked amazing.
Have you been to the Philippines?
I have not.
Oh no, okay. So if you ever do come here, don't expect me to cook for you. I'll just bring you to the right places.
Hey, that's cool. I don't mind.